occasion. We also have incense offering as well as joss paper offering for you to offer incense and joss paper to victims that were affected and ancestors. And if you'd like to say a few words, this way will be open for you to say a few words, sing a song, recite poetry in whatever language that makes the most sense for you. This is really an occasion to hold space for everyone to remember this atrocity that killed over 200,000 people in Nanjing, but also is an occupation around the Asia Pacific. And so, feel free to be in this space and express yourself in the way that is the most comfortable for you.
Thanks for coming. I think everyone is welcome. I think we hold this space also just to build a sense of deep reflection and empathy, because I think history is important for everybody. Also, see that religious people experience Spanish. As a diaspora person, indigenous people's languages, I think friends, organizers, we find everyone to share the space together, share the time together, build the capacity for difficult but necessary dialogues in the future, so that we can all come together to reject any forms of imperialism, which is a spirit for today. And also to remember people always, as grassroots people, always have the capacity to resist dominations. 咁我哋今日就喺呢度係南京大屠18年之後，我哋都知道呢一個係一個好慘痛嘅歷史啦，同時係日本帝國主義唔單止喺南京，仲有喺亞洲、東南亞、南亞、北亞同埋亞太地區都有殖民嘅歷史，侵佔同佔領嘅歷史，同埋仲有進行中嘅，包括而家嘅琉球同北海道都係存在嘅殖民歷史啦、殖民主義啦。咁我哋今日嚟係想大家一齊去用呢個時間同空間去反思同埋建立大家一啲共情，希望銘記歷史，唔好俾歷史再次發生。以後大家可以一齊展開一啲對話啦。雖然係好困難，但係我哋都覺得有必要係今日開始慢慢培養一啲對話嘅基礎。今天我們在這裡是在溫哥華唐人街，在原住民的土地上去反思，在南京大屠殺88週年之後的今天，為什麼我們還要記住這段歷史？因為這不僅僅是一段很慘痛的歷史，而且日本帝國主義不僅僅在南京，而且在東南亞、東亞、南亞、北亞、亞洲、太平洋地區都有一段殖民主義跟侵佔的歷史，甚至在今天，在包括沖繩群島、北海道仍然是在進行。但是我們今天的目的不僅僅是去悼念我們失去什麼，更重要的是我們要記住許多人他們一直在抗爭的精神跟歷史，這是很重要的。那以後希望大家可以有這個共情的能力，去展開一些必要的對話，一起去抗爭帝國霸權。So I think just to conclude, it's a space for deep reflection and healing, empathy building, because it's not just a painful history, but also ongoing imperial domination across the world. It's necessary to have that space for empathy building and solidarity and future difficult dialogues among us here. And also, I think one more thing is it's not only a space to remember and mourn the loss, which is true, but also to remember people always have the long history of resistance, and people always have capacity to resist any kind of imperial domination. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Kimball Cariou, longtime resident of this neighborhood. I've worked here since the 1990s. I'm here today on behalf of, I have friends here from a couple of organizations, the Vancouver Peace Council, the Communist Party of Canada, of course, our comrade Dr. Norman Bethune was the famous Canadian surgeon who went to China to treat the victims of the fighting against the Japanese militarists and fascists. He gave his life in that struggle, was in China for about 1.5 years before he died of an infection. In the period of the second half of 1937, Dr. Bethune traveled across the country speaking at meetings about the atrocities committed by the Spanish fascists in Spain, but also exposing the crimes of Japanese militarism in China, raising money for the victims of the imperialist, the fascist attacks in those countries. He spoke at meetings right in this neighborhood, exposing what was going on in the occupation of China, bringing some of the material aid that was raised to present to the people there as a small token of the solidarity of Canadian working people with the people of China. At the docks here, there were longshore workers. There were longshore workers who were involved in the international campaign to boycott Japanese goods. There were campaigns across the country, not only to raise material support, but to end economic ties with Japan for its crimes in the occupation of China. So this neighborhood, this city, have a long history of solidarity and remembrance of those crimes, and we are here today in solemnness and solidarity with that history. And we know, as was said, we have to continue it today to fight against imperialism and militarism on our planet today. So our thanks to the organizers for putting on this event.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. This is our second year of doing this, and I think this year we decided that it's not just a Chinese issue. A lot of Asian nations were also affected, and I would like to thank Beck over there. In our first year, we did this together outside, I think the Sun Garden area, where we had a lot of speakers, and it lasted around 4 hours. But this year, we decided to do something more of, I think a community event, and it's really appreciated that we have so many people come, and we appreciate your time. And I think these events are more needed more than ever, because we often celebrate a lot of things, but we forget. I think there's a historical forgetfulness for these things, and I think a lot of these things, if we say it in a lot of our organizations or spaces, people are not too happy with us, especially when it comes to the crimes and the crimes of humanity of our own people. Especially, I'm Chinese, and I acknowledge that China isn't perfect as well, and there are a lot of things that are happening in my own country as well as a lot of others, and also how my people can also we're settlers on indigenous land as well, and there's a lot of anti-blackness and anti-indigeneity that comes even being in Chinatown, and how we share the space with the downtown east side communities. And so I think with the Vigil, I think it's important that we look within our own spaces and know what needs not fixing, I think what needs unlearning and what needs healing in ourselves as well. And so I don't have much to say, I don't have much prepared, but I'm just grateful that people are here to support us, and we're not doing this from an organization. We're just a group of friends that decided to do this because it's what we want to do and it's what's right. And I hope that's the same for everything that we do is that, for example, organizing or activism, it just starts with one person. It could just be one person that's having a sign on the street, and then the next year there's three. It's the same story for the Downtown Eastside Women's March, where it just started with a group of friends or a lot of organizations in Chinatown or Downtown Eastside or overall. So thank you so much again.
My name is Beck. Yes, I'm a half Chinese and I also half Japanese Brazilian. And my dad is from Brazil in Sao Paulo. That has been worked in the farm after the Pearl Harbor attack. And also my mom's side is from Fushan, China, which is northeast China, and which is under the occupation of Japan as well. I really thank you for the organizer that they can organize this Vigil. Yeah, since we don't have I don't have a lot of capacity this year, so I much appreciate it. I just really want to say some words that is the during before World War II, which is around 1937. The Japanese diaspora within the Turtle Island, also in Brazil, Latin America, are actually donating their money and they collecting the materials and then just shipping that materials, also the bag, which is a bag, we call comfort bag, shipping to the Japanese military, which is to support the Japanese occupation effort. And then, also, even today, during 2015, I believe, the NAJC, which is they are writing the strong opposition letter to the Bill 79 in Ontario, which is they trying to create the date to memorize the Nanjing massacre, which is the day, Nanjing Memorial Day, which is they call. And then a lot of Japanese immigrants and a lot of like a Japanese diaspora. I don't really say like a lot. They are really small numbers because of mostly the communication done within the Japanese language. So mostly it's the Japanese speaker and Japanese immigrants are leading the denialism within the BC and also across Canada, and they claim this this is a main battlefield of the history war. While I'm saying this, it's really harmful because my mom's side came from the occupation as well, and then like my grandfather, which is that they serve, they are so my grandfather is actually the part of the Fushan War Criminal Management Center after post-war, which is all of these Japanese war criminals has been educated, and they've been educated. They also incarcerated within the jail, so they can be educated, and after that they came back to Japan, and now they're educating public since what they did to China, and I really say it's really harmful that because when I was in Japan, I am still fighting for my legal status, and then even after I came here, I still fighting for my legal status as well. And I was really, the three different nation states has been the China, Japan, as also Canada is really it's making me really struggling for my legal status. And why am I saying this? All of these language that the Japanese history denialists keep saying that this is not true, and that we are the liars, and this like Nanjing massacre never happened. It's really incredible. It's really happened. It's really harmful, and also it's not okay. Like especially, I really like to end up right now, but even today, many Chinese Korean and Chinese people are fighting for their legal status, and that's because of the Japanese occupation and their displacement to Japan serve as a forced labor. So I would like to acknowledge that like the fight is still exists, and the fight is not ended. Even the Japan, even the China, and even in the here, that we still fighting for the truth, and that is being denied for a long time. Thank you.
I'm Japanese, and I grew up in Japan. And I was born in the 60s, so I remember the time when this book came out, 19 months ago. And then he was a newspaper journalist. So like he would publish what we went to China and so research Nanjing Beyond, and it was from the it was a article on the largest newspaper, and so people read those, and it was like, whoa! So that was the I think the first shock for the Japanese people, and then after that, another person, and then so a lot of research has been done for many years. So I grew up by the 80s, like 19 months ago was public knowledge, and it was taught in schools. It was in the textbook. So and then they have been producing films, so I watch TV programs. So it has been like that, but there has been the pushback. The pushback had started in the 90s, the denialist pushback led by Abe Shinzo, who became the prime minister. So because of the knowledge was open to the public, everybody knew it was taught in school, and then so there was this pushback and denialists, and so now there's we know a lot about denialists, but actually if you go to the UBC Asian Studies Library, there's a lot of research done, and then lots of research resources to learn about this Japanese invasion and atrocities, and so it is there, but the thing is it's not being shared in the community because not many people are interested in going through those researches or watching those programs. But yeah, there is, I can see hope. There was a massacre in Japan after the big Kanto earthquake, massacre of the Korean people, and that has not been the public knowledge until 5 years ago. 5 years ago, Korea was colonized by the Japanese, so there was a lot of Koreans living in Japan by the time the war ended, and then they stayed, and then they have been leading the activist movement about the war crimes and all kinds of things. And these people have been and then the Chinese people who are living in Japan, and they have led those movements. And so that now, 5 years ago, people didn't know about these massacres, but it is public knowledge now. Within 5 years, I couldn't believe it. When before that, I had to go to this Korean people's activist meeting to learn about it, but there has been movie made, and then most of people know about it now. So there is a hope, and then denialists is not the large number. So there are a lot of Japanese people who have this knowledge and who are willing to change the situation of denialism. So I just think they should them. And it is so nice to have come to this memorial. We tried to have it 10 years ago. We had some memorial with Chinese people and Japanese people for maybe 3 years or so. Yeah, small gathering. But we couldn't continue, so it is really nice to see this memorial, and I hope this is going to continue and grow. Thank you so much.
My name is Kyoko Judy Hanazawa, and I'm a Japanese Canadian. I grew up here in this area. My family were interned during the Second World War because we were considered enemy aliens. So there's a mix of things going on here, but I would like to say that as I was associated with the National Association of Japanese Canadians, and with the local Japanese Canadian community organization, which had a human rights committee, and way back there was a party of doctors and ex-military people from Japan who had been a part of Unit 731. Unit 731 was a germ warfare research unit in China, and they experimented on live people, including freezing them alive, and using different kinds of germs to see what would happen, like anthrax. And so this party of people came, and the NAJC, my organization, sponsored the event at the Vancouver Public Library. But even though this was public, and it included reference to the San Francisco Treaty, which was the Americans who decided not to charge the Japanese military as in Germany. There was the Nuremberg trials. There's no trial of that stature in Japan. So an activist leader in the local human rights community, Tatsuo Kage, he was my mentor, and he was so active in trying to promote this awareness of what Japan had been, because as a young person growing up in Japan, he felt cheated because he never learned, the public in Japan never learned at the time what was going on. And so with this Unit 731 display at the library, there was an awareness, and yet it was sort of shut down again. And I know that from the time I was growing up here, there were tensions I felt among my Chinese Canadian friends, because I grew up with them, and I knew that their grandparents had certain feelings about Japanese people. And sometimes I felt it myself, even as a child visiting my friends in their houses. But I did not understand. But I feel that there's historic relation issues between many Canadian diasporic communities, Asian and Japanese Canadians, which really need maybe more dialogue, more meeting together, more understanding. I guess based on the understanding that things have happened here, of course, with Indigenous people. But we are settlers here. We seem invested in being Canadian, and I think we're still facing Asian racism, anti-Asian racism. And it's really important for communities to work together to develop that collective togetherness to combat hate, racism, imperialism, to speak out for justice, to do all of these things by becoming a collaborative, collective organization of people. And so I'm just saying to you that I totally wish Japan would officially do the apology, because they've done various sort of semi-apologies through history, but they haven't done the whole government level apology. And the underlying tensions in Asia still exist, and I think China also is trying to sort of keep that sort of anti-Japan sense alive, because it's part of China's agenda too. So all of these tensions exist, and we here in Canada can also feel them. I know my Chinese Canadian friends, they feel those tensions, and it needs to get addressed. People like us who are regular, on the street, we understand the importance of working together, and I believe we're here for that purpose. So I'm just wanting to say that I'm happy to be among you. I wanted to express this knowledge and awareness in my own organizational work in the past, and that this imperialism and resistance and publicly acknowledging the atrocities that Japan committed is all important to do, and yet it's still a struggle, and we have to keep fighting it. We just have to. We have to stand up and keep fighting it. And so I'm glad I'm among you, because I feel that you're also feeling the same thing. Thank you.
everyone. My name is Rachel. I'm a Haba Malaysian. I'm a master's student in political science at UBC, and I specialize in indigenous political theory and the intersections of genocide and ecocide. So the Nanjing massacre isn't very foreign to me. I specifically research and study it as it concerns imperialism and historical amnesia. But when I first started researching it and presenting on what the Nanjing massacre means, so I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Ottawa, and within my program for conflict studies and human rights, maybe only 10 out of like 400 people knew about Nanjing massacre and the war crimes of the Japanese. So even though when I was presenting on all of the casualties, the sexual violence, the tribunal, which didn't prosecute all of the soldiers and the generals appropriately, there was still not enough light shed on it. And so I think, again, people have already spoken about that. It's a correlation to the rise of xenophobia, anti-Chinese rhetoric and narratives that didn't only start when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, but it was a resurgence. It all stems from these concepts of yellow peril, seeing Chinese people as threats to Western security and prosperity. And the infantilization of the Japanese after the war, when they became allies with the West, and now still seeing Chinese as cheap, dirty, disposable labor, and undermining, especially what happened in Nanjing. And now we have all of these descendants, these relatives, with their war traumas and the intergenerational stories, not only being erased, but rejected, neglected, and used to further put Japan on a pedestal. And so while you can look at the geopolitical conflicts happening today, and you can't say necessarily that China has the best record of human rights regardless now, it doesn't mean that you can negate what happened in the past, especially when you look at countless photos, the journals, the memories and the notes that I mean, it's traumatizing when you go through and you see what was done to children, to babies, to pregnant mothers, entire families annihilated, and at what cost, right? This might have been physical and sexual violence, but it was more than that. It was waging psychological warfare, and that permeates through generations. And there's descendants who live in Vancouver still, across Canada, but are their stories ever highlighted? No, because once again, all Chinese people are grouped into this monolith, and the West will still see a lot of us as victims, regardless of our different distinctions and histories that we experience. But thank you for showing up. This is really important to continue tracing a lot of these historical memories and narratives to ensure that people's traumas are recognized, but to ensure that within the future and the present, these things don't recur. Thank you.
My name is Leslie Kemp, and thank you so much for holding this. I think we live in a new age of imperialism today. We do, and it's war is a scourge on so many people, and whenever it happens, so many people are harmed, not just directly but indirectly, and that intergenerational trauma, you know, is very real. And I want to just, you know, thank Sako and Judy, yes, I recognize you for speaking up as, you know, people of Japanese ancestry, and we need to tell the truth, and it's painful sometimes, and we need to keep on resisting imperialism and fighting against the pressures that lead to that, and part of that is capitalism. We have to say that capitalism, it depends on imperialism for profits. And I just want to say that it's also important that we distinguish between rulers and the ruling class and people. We can't hold the people of different ancestries accountable for what the rulers did. We can't even now, because how many of us support some of the rulers that are in power today? I won't name them, but I think you know who their names are, that are still perpetuating war. And this is really important, to acknowledge these memories, to acknowledge and to try and repair relationships. Nothing could be more important except for overthrowing the system that perpetuates imperialism. Thank you.
I also want to let you know we also have some scenes here that details the timeline of Japanese imperialism during that period in both Chinese and English. So yeah, just to see what the impacts are. I guess one of the things I could do is like read out. Yeah, why don't I just read it out really quickly? Why we remember the Nanjing Massacre and resist Japanese imperialism. The Nanjing Massacre was one of the largest atrocities of Japanese imperialism, with over 200,000 civilians massacred and countless others subjected to rape and maiming from December 13, 1937 to February 1938. But the violence in Nanjing did not occur in isolation. It was inseparable from a much broader context of Imperial Japan's invasion, occupation, and colonial oppression across places in East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, North Asia, and Asia Pacific. Communities across these regions experienced forced labor, cultural suppression and erasure, military sexual slavery, mass killings, and other serious everyday violence. These are not distant histories, but unhealed wounds, unspeakable losses, and traumatized memories. For many, these remain within generational memory, with trauma passed down through records, stories, silences, and living testimonies in families and communities. In Chinatown, where this vigil is held, many seniors have lived through Imperial Japan's occupation, and many diasporic families come from places of pains and losses, societies where people's relationships, life chances, knowledge systems, and body-minds were deeply disrupted and broken by Japanese imperialism. Despite facing atrocities, people in colonized and occupied regions, particularly indigenous peoples, have always fought back and resisted. This vigil remembers the silence, remembers the unspeakable, and remembers the resistance and resilience of everyone who refused to be dominated and erased. As imperialism continues to manifest and take hold in Palestine, Sudan, Congo, Turtle Island, and beyond, we hold this vigil as a space for reflection, empathy, and remembrance, so that we can continue to reject all forms of imperial domination and remember all forms of resistance. So in this scene, what we try to do is really highlight not the atrocities, but the resistance towards Japanese imperialism. And so some of the places in terms of what was occupied and then resistance. Ainu, Monster, Indigenous Ainu peoples' cultural survival and activism against Japan's settler colonialism, displacement, and systemic erasure. I'm just going to say the places. Ryukyu, Taiwan, Southern Sakhalin. I'm going to, some of these names I'm not going to get right. I apologize in advance. Korea, Micronesia, East Siberia, Northeast China, the Republic of China, and then the Nanjing Massacre, Vietnam, Hong Kong, the Philippines, Guam, Thailand, Malaya, Burma, Singapore, Indonesia, Aleutian Islands, New Guinea, Andaman and Nicobar Islands in India. So those were all of the places that we know where Imperial Japan invaded and occupied from 1869 as well as ongoing to today. So I welcome you to take one of these to learn more about the resistance of people. Thank you. So I'm going to share one of my memories in case anybody else wanted to send some of their memories. So one of the memories in terms of, to illustrate generational trauma and how it's passed on, my grandmother one time, she only mentioned this one time when I was a very young kid that I remember about living under Japanese imperialism. And she said I had to run into the forest for days without food. And it just struck me as a little kid, like, why would any child have to be subjected to that? And she never mentioned it again. That was the only moment. But it struck me very deeply that even as an adult right now, I remember that those few minutes of what she said, of how it impacted her, and I witnessed how it impacted her as I was growing up in terms of how she operated in the world, how she lived, and you can see that is part of her, and it does pass on through generations. I was talking to an elder deeper in interior BC, and he was, when I mentioned how about the Japanese, and he was very reluctant to speak about it because he felt very indifferent because his older sister was killed at the hands of the Japanese when he was a child. So the Nanjing Massacre, Japanese imperialism, for many it might feel like it's in history, but it's not. It's not a distant past. It's within our DNA, it's within our cells, it's within our memories. It's passed on from generations to generations. A senior in Chinatown, she lived under the occupation. Her memory is fading, but she still remembers living under the occupation, and how she expresses it is that she had to learn Japanese in order to assimilate and to protect herself and her family. So she remembers the Japanese words, she remembers the Japanese songs, and many people think it's very cute that she can sing these Japanese songs and say what her nose is in Japanese and do head and shoulders, knees and toes in Japanese. But it's not cute. It comes from a place of occupation, of the mind, of language in order to survive. So these are some of the memories I have of Japanese imperialism and how it affected me. And yes, today is commemorating the Nanjing Massacre, and I'm not from Nanjing. I'm Hakka and Toisan, so from southern China. And so for some folks, they might not be aware that Japanese imperialism affected all of us to this day, and how we live and be in this world.
Hi, my name is Haruko Kano, and I live on the east side. My family started in BC in the late 1800s. One of the things that I'm learning, just taking part in some of the healing that's needed, and we're talking not just the first people who were targeted, but intergenerational transference of what people weren't allowed to heal at the time. It's very important that this healing happens through all of us, because no one gets to walk away from this. In some way, we are all part of this. Right now, the city, I don't know if you've noticed, has come into Chinatown and it started to take down buildings and build buildings and architecture that has no reflection of the history of the people here. There are ancestors that have experienced the massacre at Nanjing. There are people living here who are the descendants of those people. People who have businesses here are part of that. And the city is going through with rezoning and changing the bylaws in order for developers to come in and build whatever they want. So BD Group has gotten the okay to build a building right here that doesn't reflect anything about the people that live here and work here, and who are part of the history of making Vancouver. So we have a tendency in this city to not want to have history. All new buildings, no indication of culture. We have to address the kind of stupidity that's happening in our city. Because this is one of the cities that has the highest rate of diversity. cultural, racial diversity. And we're busy erasing it. That's part of the human rights to have safe homes, secure homes. Not just for those that can afford it, but for those who cannot. We're needing compassion. We need to be able to feel and stand with discomfort that our ancestral countries may have done some terrible, terrible things. And also here, even as settlers, because we didn't know. We have to be able to hold that discomfort and work with each other to build a kind of trust that we can call on when we need to face down the imperialism, the colonialism that already exists here and is working really well. So now we have a Canadian version of Trump that's removing all of the security, finances, and support of people that need it here. Neighborhood houses, community centers, social services that are supporting those most vulnerable, without even notifying the bank the money has been taken out. And so you're not hearing about it on the news. You're not hearing about all the stuff that we should be hearing, much in the same way as Japan with the Japanese people. We're told what's happening. We're going through the same thing here. I know it might take some time for you to do some research. Just do a little bit at a time so that you're not walking blindfolded. Because what happens to the most vulnerable is going to come to everybody here. And we are going to have to hold the discomforts that we have with our own histories and work together. If we don't, that idea of the fragmentation that's happening in Canada, that's what's going to be our vulnerability, and that's what's going to take us